Okay. American Beauty, directed by Sam Mendes, greatly exemplifies the art of film form and mise-en-scene in several key scenes. This is an early scene that shows examples of repetition, or more importantly motifs, an important component of film form. A motif, as stated on page 63 of the text, is a significant repeated element that contributes to overall form. This can be an object, color, sound, a person, or even a character trait. Right away, the audience can see what might be the central motive of the movie: roses in the center of the table. These may symbolize the passion and lust, and even the color of the roses red is another motif of the film. Here you can see the color of Caroline's lipstick is red. We will see more of both of these motifs within the span of this commentary. Even the family dinner scenes, like this one, or simply the family getting together to eat, are a repeated element that contributes to the form of the film. Motifs often have functions in the film, such as the roses. They differentiate between reality and fantasy in this film, as there are full flowers and scenes that are actually happening in the movie, and the roses are just petals in Lester's fantasies. An example of a character trait that is an important repeated element is Janie's angst and anger towards her parents, which we see in this scene here. This also has a cause and effect relationships with other characters, like Lester in this movie, which is another component of film form. The bitter attitudes between the central characters here, Lester's family, are examples of similarities in the film. When Lester and Janie talk here by the sink, we see that these similar relationships will start to change, as Lester yearns for a better relationship with his daughter and for things to be the way they were before. This is an example of development in form, and from here until the end of the film we will see progression of these changes. Also, during this conversation, we see Ricky videotaping Lester and Janie through a window, which is yet another repeated element in the movie. Actually, both the looking through windows and videotaping are both examples of repetition, and this camera placement is an example of the use of cinematography. As a result, we see how both cinematography and form are intertwined. The meaning of looking through windows is important to our experience of the film's form, which may be interpreted differently depending on the audience. Four types of meanings are discussed in the text from pages 57 to 60, which are the referential, explicit, implicit, and symptomatic meanings. For example, a referential meaning of looking through windows, which is basically a simple plot summary, is that the characters are often viewing things from a distance. An explicit meaning, which goes just a bit deeper, explaining the point of having the characters view things from a distance, might be that the characters each see things differently and as a result have their own interpretations of what they are seeing. This is actually important to the plot of the film, as the characters' interpretations of certain actions leads to the ultimate outcome and tragedy of the film. This is another example of the cause and effect component of form. Also intertwined here are the stories and relationships of Ricky, Lester, and his family. This is an example of unity, another component. Another way to express unity is the way the components of the film's form are tightly woven together. We also see roses again, a crucial motive of the film. Now here we just saw Caroline set up a sign for the house she is going to try and sell, after which she sees the sign for Buddy Kane, a competitor of hers in the real estate business. This functions to show Caroline's competitiveness and need for success. She also is seen repeating the phrase, "I will sell this house today," further outlining this yearning for success trait of hers. As she prepares the house to be sold, we see more motives: the roses, red lipstick, red dress, red wallpaper, and even a red lamp. These are all examples of props, background, costume, and makeup, which are all components of mise-en-scene. This shows how these components of mise-en-scene are used to develop motives and contribute to the form of the film. Also, during the cleaning montage, there is a jingle in the background, which serves basically as the theme song of the movie. It is yet another repeated element of the film and often plays for other characters' key scenes in the film. As she shows the house to these potential buyers, we see examples of difference and variation, another component of form, and how they are used with mise-en-scene to serve a function in the film. Caroline is peppy, excited, and seemingly wound up very tight as she shows the house. The potential buyers, on the other hand, appear uninterested, unsatisfied, and even annoyed with the state of the house and Caroline's attitude. This variation in attitude and character traits between the potential buyers and Caroline, and the acting involved on all of their behalf, functions to show not only just how much Caroline needs to be successful, but also how this trait of hers is harmful. It is harmful for her and her relationship with Lester, contributing to the cause and effect component of form, as it contributes to Lester's decision to turn his life around, the central plot of the movie. We see how it's harmful to her well-being, as the dissatisfaction of the potential buyers is so devastating to her, and she breaks down crying here in this scene. She could also have had a breakdown as a culmination of everything going on in her life, but this is open to interpretation of the audience. It is interesting to note how this competitive trait could have been a good thing, as it is in many other films, but the form of the film and mise-en-scene work together to outline how this is in fact a negative trait in this film. This scene of Caroline's breakdown shows some more components of mise-en-scene and the power it has on the audience's experience of the film. As she closes those shades, the lighting changes and gives a feeling of loneliness and sadness. Annette Bening's acting, part of the staging component of mise-en-scene, also changes with the lighting. She breaks down and shows the audience how there is more to her than just her competitive nature, and the audience gets a glimpse at how dysfunctional she is. Contrasted with the previous scene of Caroline showing the house to potential buyers, which is upbeat and full of light and color, this scene is dark and sad. The audience is able to experience this darkness because of the filmmaker's use of components of mise-en-scene. Furthermore, the audience is subject to a depth of information as they see beyond what Lester Burnham, the central character, is able to see. This is related to the principles of narrative form. In fact, if Lester could have seen the state of his wife in the scene where she breaks down to hitting herself and crying, the plot of the film may have been much different. In an upcoming scene, here at the basketball game, Lester fantasizes about his daughter's girlfriend, and it is a prime example of the art of film form, mise-en-scene, and the importance of how the audience may experience film. There are several ways the audience may interpret the meaning of Lester's fantasy. Referring back to the 4 types of meaning introduced in the text, the referential meaning of this fantasy is just that a father is sexually attracted to a younger woman and fantasizing about having relations with her. This is just a bare bones meaning, but to look a bit closer, an explicit meaning of this upcoming scene could be that an older man, caught in a dull, unfulfilling life, is overcome by lust and fantasizes about a younger woman, bringing more meaning to his life. Furthermore, an implicit meaning of this scene could be that low self-esteem, frustration, and even boredom can lead to losing oneself in fantasy and being overcome by lust. Again, this scene could be interpreted differently depending on the person. Lastly, there is the symptomatic meaning. As noted in the text on page 60, this meaning is like the implicit meaning as it is abstract and general, but can also be an assumed characteristic of American society. For this scene, the symptomatic meaning may be that monotonous 9-to-5 jobs in modern America may lead to problems of self-worth, depression, and sometimes ultimately suppressed sexuality and sexual deviancy. But beyond these interpretations, this fantasy, or at least the central character of this fantasy, Angela, functions as a cause for Lester's decision to change his life. She is central to the cause and effect of the film's form. Back to mise-en-scene, there are 4 general components as mentioned on page 115 of the text: setting, costumes, makeup, lighting, and staging. This scene uses all of these components to achieve the effect of capturing Lester's fantasy. At first, the lighting, props, and acting of the characters are all consistent with reality. The music goes with the cheerleading performance, and the acting, specifically referring to the dance routine of the cheerleaders, makes sense for a high school basketball game. But once Lester's fantasy starts here, a spotlight shines on Angela, which is definitely inconsistent with the reality of the situation. At this point, she is also grinning at him, and this acting also contributes to the dreamlike setting. Now she's dancing seductively, which is part of the staging component of mise-en-scene. The lighting changes too, as before it was bright, now it is dark, except for the lights highlighting Angela and Lester. Also, there is no one in the stands and in the background anymore, as they vanish once the lighting in the background changed. Again, we also are about to see the roses, and in this scene they are just rose petals, unlike the full flowers we have seen in the other scenes. This use of props shows the audience the surreal nature of the situation, since, as I pointed out before, the roses are full flowers during realistic scenes, and there are petals during fantasy scenes, as we're going to see here. This concept has been noted also on abfilmstudy.com, and it was discussed more in depth. It is easier to see here that the rose's motive symbolizes lust, passion, and fantasy, and by using props, a component of mise-en-scene, the filmmakers were able to represent core themes of the movie.